Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'll give it a few minutes just so everybody can trickle in, but this is the correct link, and we'll get started in a little bit. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. We'll give it just another moment here, and then we'll get started. Okay. Well, thank you again for joining us as we go over resume writing introductions and best practices. We'll get started here. It's all right if a few people trickle in a little bit late. But just to begin kind of covering what we're going to be talking about today is how to write a resume effectively so that it does, optimize your chances in the job search. And we'll also go over a few job search best practices as well, and some tips and tricks to make sure that you are standing out, in a very highly saturated market here. So before we get started getting into the details of resume writing and formatting, we'll go ahead and take a little bit of time to go over who we are. So here at Employment Boost, we are a full-service outplacement, career coaching, and resume writing firm with headquarters in Troy, Michigan, but with offices across the U.S. And sites including Chicago, Cleveland, Denver, and New York. And so we do offer B2B and B2C services With over a decade of industry-leading career services expertise and experience, our team here knows a lot about the ins and outs of the job market, the job search, and how to best optimize your chances there. And we also are known with 5-star reviews across multiple platforms, be it Google, Facebook, Yelp, and SHRM as well. And as a subsidiary of Heavy Hitter Holdings, there's a lot that we have to work on to continue to hone our expertise in career services and in resume writing. So we are one of many subsidiaries of Heavy Hitter Holdings, and we can leverage the expertise of the multiple recruiting firms, executive search firms across multiple different markets and sectors to inform the resume writing process and our career coaching services as well. So we have a lot of resources that we're constantly kind of looking at, evolving to make sure that we are giving the best tips and expertise to fit a constantly evolving job market. So before we get started talking about the resume tips itself, and I know there are some students still joining in and trickling in, so I'd be happy to go over this later on. If anybody has any questions or if anyone missed anything, we can absolutely cover that. So the team itself, as I mentioned, we have the resources of the search firm, many search firms that we work with. So we are comprised of a team of certified professional resume writers, or CPRWs, career coaches, executive recruiters, and market researchers. So again, we are constantly working together to make sure that we are staying up to date here, which is especially important in times like now. So now that we've gone over who we are, and again, we'll take a little bit of time to do that just so more people can continue to trickle in, but we'll also go over an agenda. So I'll give it a moment here as well. But first of all, we will be introducing resume writing, going over the purpose of the resume, how recruiters and hiring managers use resumes and look through resumes and find resumes. Then we'll move forward into content development and how to actually build out the bulk of the content of your experience in the resume and how to kind of work through the multiple different layers of viewers of your resume. We'll also go over formatting and style, common mistakes, and then job search best practices. So I'll give it a moment here and take a minute for you all to review this agenda, and again, for more people to trickle in, and then we'll get started talking about the content itself. Okay, so now that we've gone over what we're going to be covering today, we can get started with the basics. So what is the purpose of a resume? And a resume in itself is a piece of marketing materials. You are marketing your skills, your accomplishments, your strengths to show a company why you are the best person for the role. And something really important here to note is that the resume does not have to be all-encompassing. It doesn't need to be a manifesto of your career experiences. Rather, you should be very selective about the information that you are putting on your resume so that it's persuasive and informative in a way that aligns with the needs of the company that you are applying to. Your resume is also a really important tool when it comes to your professional brand, and something that we recommend thinking about is looking at yourself and what your professional brand is. And that's something that you can keep in mind throughout the resume writing process to make sure that you're showing your strengths and you're marketing yourself in a way that shows that you are the best candidate for the role because of your experience, because of your knowledge, to make sure that you are getting the best chance. And the professional brand is not just in showing your strengths and your skills, but it's also about reflecting that in the writing and formatting. You want the writing and the formatting to reflect that brand and what you want to convey to the hiring manager. And so on that note, when it comes to who is reading your resume, it's really important to understand your audience before you even begin writing out the content itself. So knowing who is reading your resume is, again, just as important. And so typically, as you can see, supervisors, HR managers, talent acquisition specialists, or recruiters are going to be overlooking your resume. But there's also a fourth piece called the applicant tracking system, which we'll get into. And the applicant tracking system, or ATS, is just as important as these people that are reading your resumes. So the ATS is something that is becoming increasingly important. And again, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of it a little bit. But basically, when it comes to outlining the ATS and how it's important, you first have to understand what it is. So the ATS is an electronic database that stores resumes. And when you submit your resume to a job posting, it will go to the applicant tracking system. And from there, recruiters, hiring managers, these supervisors will search through the ATS to find the best candidate. And as you can imagine, with some roles, there are thousands and thousands of applicants. So the applicant tracking system is incredibly valuable in that it allows hiring managers to search through and weed out the candidates that are not as qualified or the candidates that are qualified and find them. And what the applicant tracking system values is keywords or buzzwords. And so these words are incredibly important to have on your document. And we'll go into how to find those keywords, but it's important to also understand that it's not just about having the words that they're looking for, but having them in a strategic manner. So things like frequency, placement on the resume, and the font style or font type, so boldness, make an impact in how your resume is sorted in the applicant tracking system when a hiring manager does input that search term. Words that are used more frequently are going to carry more value and basically increase the visibility of your resume. And similarly with placement, words that are at the top of the resume are going to carry more weight than those at the bottom of the resume. And bolding is another way to increase the kind of efficacy of those terms as well. Applicant tracking systems aren't just used for search terms though. They're also used for things like location. So if you ever see a job description and it mentions, they only want candidates from a certain area, they'll use geofiltering to select those candidates and kind of eliminate the candidates that are not in that area that they're looking for. Education and certifications are another thing that the applicant tracking system can pick out. So keep in mind, again, not just search terms, but these other factors as well. So what's really important here is knowing that you're not just writing for people. It's important to tell your story. You want these managers and supervisors to see who you are and see why you would be such a valuable candidate. But it's more than that as well, because the applicant tracking system is kind of like the first point of defense for the resume. And it's important to make sure that you're formatting your resume in a way that the applicant tracking system can parse through. Because if it can't find those keywords, even if they're in there because of things like graphics or images, your resume might never see a human eye. So understanding the digital and human nature of the job search is really key to success. And the applicant tracking system has seen an increase in popularity over the years, and especially as it continues and as the job market evolves, the applicant tracking systems become more crucial. And so we have a graph that shows that domestic Google searches for the term applicant tracking system have actually increased steadily for the past 12 months, and that trajectory is likely to keep up here. So again, really important to understand the digital nature and the key term nature as the ATS becomes more widely utilized. And as of now, we see that 75% of recruiters and hiring professionals do use an applicant tracking system. So it's, again, growing more, and it will likely increase in utilization. So making sure that you understand this aspect of the job search is really important, with only 22% saying that they don't use an applicant tracking system and 3% unsure. That 75% is really important, and that's the target that you want to hit, especially as in the job search, it's very likely that you're applying to multiple different companies. And so while one might not use this system, it's likely that at least one will. So either way, it's important to have that information on there. And something that we have seen is that as many as 75% of qualified applicants are actually rejected by the ATS due to reasons that we might think are inconsequential, like formatting or graphics. things that we think might not be impactful can actually make a very noticeable difference there. So making sure that just because you're qualified, if the formatting isn't right, your resume may never be seen by a hiring professional who will see that you are qualified. So the ATS is very important there. And we see that 8 out of 10 candidates describe their job search as stressful, which is completely understandable. And especially now, even in normal times, the job search can be very draining. So it's really important to make sure that you are putting yourself in the best place that you can to help relieve some of that stress, because you have a game plan, you have a strategy, and you have a straightforward approach to how to enter the job search. And with that in mind, it's really important to start with a plan. You want to make sure that you have a strategy going forward, that you're not just throwing darts blindly, that you're being deliberate about how you choose to pursue the job search, and that can make an incredible impact. So what to do before you even start the resume writing process is to do your research. And so what that means is gathering relevant keywords. And that's something that you can do online. So start looking for as many relevant job descriptions as you can find, and look through the job descriptions and the summaries of what they're looking for. And that can be an incredible way to get more of an idea of what these mysterious keywords or buzzwords actually are. So as you can see in our example here, searching entry-level finance, go through these roles or whatever roles that you are looking to pursue and read through the job descriptions. And so make sure, even if it's something that you're not entirely sure that you want to do, but you're still going to apply, that you're doing this for each role and that you're seeing any patterns that are coming up. So certainly similar roles are going to have very similar requirements. And while it does differ on a company basis, it's still a great idea to kind of do your research, understand the industry language, and get that head start with the buzzwords and the keywords there. So in an example here of a job description, you can see that the responsibilities are, this one is highlighted, managing stakeholder relationships. And if you see that and you think, this is something that it's mentioning, it's something that is a requirement as the job, keep that in mind, and you can put something in your resume like stakeholder relationship management is something that you're good at. And if it's a term that you have never come across before, again, this is a great opportunity to do your research, look it up, and gather more industry knowledge, which is going to end up being an asset anyway. And again, here another example, analysis. Make sure that you're showing what they need for the role. Don't show things that are irrelevant or not necessary. Show what they're looking for to prove that you would be a great candidate for that position. So once you've gotten that framework of building those keywords, getting more of an idea of what they're looking for and what they want to do, you can start actually building the resume itself. Now that you're prepared, you have a game plan, and you have a strategy. And I mentioned earlier how important formatting is and how the applicant tracking system, and when it comes to formatting, it can be a difference of whether or not your resume is considered for the role. So making sure that your resume is formatted in an appealing way, not just for the hiring manager, but also for the ATS, is crucial. So you can see here an example, and you want your resume to be as visually efficient as possible. So what that means is enough white space, enough text, making sure that everything is clearly labeled here. In this example, you can see professional experience and achievements. Everything is listed out in a way that the hiring manager will know exactly what they are looking at here. And when you have 5 years of experience or less, we strongly recommend a 1-page resume with approximately 400 words. And that's not a hard limit, but try to keep that in mind. You don't want to overwhelm anybody with too much text. And if it is getting a little heavy on the word count, look through and see if you can find any ways to make things a little bit more concise and more clear. Finally, don't use colors, text box, tables, or graphics. This is for the ATS, but also for the human eye. Let's say that you use orange font in your resume, and the recruiter looking at your resume hates orange. Whether they know it or not, there could be an unconscious bias that impacts the way they look at your resume. So keeping it neutral, keeping it professional, and keeping it clean is really important, again, for the ATS, but also so that we don't invoke any unconscious bias on the end of the hiring manager. So now that we've gone over formatting, we can start to break down the actual components and pieces of the resume itself, starting off with the summary. And the summary should be at the very top of your resume. Because recruiters and hiring managers only take about 8 to 12 seconds to review a resume before deciding whether or not to move a candidate forward, getting the summary right is very important. You can use this place for keyword optimization, but you can also use it to show who you are. You want to make sure that you're standing out, again, in a highly saturated candidate pool. So show things that you're good at, show your strengths, overall achievements, and things that you know that you can do for the company that you're applying to. And again, I mentioned that words at the top of the resume carry more value in the ATS, so the summary is a great place to do that and add those words that they're looking for. So the example here shows financial accounting, business operations, customer service, managerial accounting. By putting things like that in the summary, you're helping yourself by putting in those search terms and increasing the visibility of your resume. Something with the summary as well is using a job title. And you can use the job title to either reflect what you are doing currently or what you are looking to do. So we'll have an example up here in just a moment with two variations on the job title. This one being the first being financial professional, and then audit professional. So by using the things that are relevant in the job description in your summary, you can declare interest, you can show that you have these skills and you know what you want to do. Or again, you can use your current title. Maybe you're a manager, in retail or in food service. You can show that you're a manager and show those leadership skills in this, the job title itself. So keep that in mind. Again, with the summary, you want to make sure that you're using that space to the best of your ability. And especially, with a one-page resume, you want to make sure that the real estate and the content that you're showing is as impactful as possible. So the summary is really crucial there. Stay away from objective statements. I'll go over that in a little bit, but those have kind of fallen by the wayside as the professional summary becomes more important. And the summary itself should be about 3 to 4 sentences. You don't want to go too far beyond 4 sentences. Again, we want to make sure that we're using the space wisely, that it's clean, and you want to make sure that you're also showing your skills and experience. So use the job description, take those keywords that you've identified, and place them in the summary to make sure that, again, you're getting the most out of that space and most out of that content. So now that we've covered the summary, we can start talking about the bulk of the resume content itself. And so for each role, you want to make sure that the bullet either represents a responsibility, an accomplishment, showing that you are using your skills to make these happen and get these done. So do your best to keep the bullets to 1 or 2 lines. Again, we don't need to put in too much information. You want it to be clean and as visually efficient as possible, as we mentioned. But showing that you are a contributor that can add value to a corporation. Try to stay away from too much task-based language. Try to stay away from things that are not relevant to the roles that you're applying to. Instead, think back on your academic and professional achievements and think about how they have impacted the companies you work for and how that can be transferable to a future role. And that could be with any kind of job. It could be if you worked in customer service, it could be if you worked in babysitting, a family company, whatever that may be, think about the impact, think about what you're most proud of and show it. So it's really important there. And then as well, using action verbs to start each bullet as a best practice in general, but it also kind of makes the language more dynamic, makes things more action-oriented, and it makes it seem like you are somebody who's more of a go-getter than someone who just does things because they have to. So switch up the action verbs. You can see, for example, here we have generated, verified, efficiently completed. Feel free to play around with those. You can use words like spearhead, you can use words like championed. Just keep in mind that as well to add more life into the language itself, and being able to play around with the words is an important thing to do and make sure that it's reflecting how you see yourself and who you are. So beyond the language itself, it's important to include as many quantitative metrics in your resume as you can. Just to show the volume of work that you've done and your ability to manage a lot of things happening at once, right? If you are experienced in high volume environments, again, whether it be food, customer service, you can show that. You can show that you're able to handle those things in a professional and efficient manner. So an example here 14,000 US client franchises, 10 daily contracts. You can talk about the customers that you've worked with, how many orders you served in a day, whatever it may be, whatever is relevant to your professional experience, you can do that. And you can do that with academic projects as well. So if you can pull up any of those numbers to kind of fortify and quantify your achievements, we strongly recommend including those, again, if it's an option. So in terms of timelines here, it's really important to make sure that you're being very consistent about the presentation of your experience and of what you've done. So if, for example, we'll use the example of months here. So let's say you want to include the months that you worked for a company or for an internship. Absolutely do that, but make sure that if you are including months for one, you're including them for everything, and same goes with just years. And so something that we'll be talking about a lot is consistency. But consistency really is crucial when it comes to presentation. Things that are inconsistent, or if you are kind of jumping around in terms of formatting, it might make the hiring manager think that you're disorganized, and so we want to avoid that as much as possible and make sure that the document is polished and clean. So then with content as well, it's important to be specific about the geographies of your locations that you've worked at. An example here, Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. Show the places, show where you've worked to, again, give the hiring manager a little bit more of an idea of your movements, where you've worked, and again, kind of the geographies there. So we always recommend including that. Make sure that you're also including your location in your header. Where you're residing. It doesn't have to be your address, but make sure at the very least you're including a zip code and a city and state. And again, that's going to come into play with the geo-filtering aspects of the ATS. So be sure to include that, again, not just in the content of the resume, but for your header as well. And again, consistency is really key here. Make sure that you're formatting things consistently throughout, and then also try to stagger the font sizes. So as you can see on this example, the place of work and the title and the city and state are all a little bit of a larger font with variations in bolding, italics, everything like that. And then when you go down to the bullets themselves, they're a little bit smaller and they have no bolding or any kind of typeface like that. And that just makes it easier to read. So imagine if you had a resume that was all exactly the same font, no bolding, no stylistic changes there. It would kind of look like a wall of text, which can be incredibly hard to read. So and again, keeping in mind that hiring managers only take about 8 to 12 seconds to look over a resume, you want to make sure that it is as easy as possible for them to be able to get through, identify your achievements so that they can move you forward. So making sure that it looks good, that everything's not the same size and font style is really important as well. It just looks better. So keep that in mind. And then when it comes to the education and formalities, so be it projects, certifications, training that you've taken, volunteerism, be strategic about where you place this. And so the education section on a resume does kind of change as you grow older, as you get more experience. So if you are a recent grad, we recommend including the education at the top, or if you're a student. Because a lot of the times what you're learning in school is going to be most relevant to what you want to do moving forward with your job search. So placing that at the top can be great. You can show things like relevant coursework, capstone and marketing projects, whatever it may be, whatever projects or accomplishments that you've worked on in school are going to have value, and not just in showing your experience, but also with the keywords themselves. So a good kind of standard that we hold is that the longer you've been out of school, the less relevant education becomes, so we can go further down on the resume. But if you're changing industries or if you just graduated, we recommend keeping that education on top. And then, so again, we'll go over with consistency, but be consistent about how you format the end of your resume, or if you're choosing to include your education on the top of the resume. So you can see in this version, we've left aligned and stacked everything. You absolutely don't have to do that, but just make sure whatever you choose to do is reflected throughout the document. So again, important for readability, helps the eye skim through the content, and again, it can show you that you're organized, that you polished the document, and it's something that you've really prepared for. And then with the education and formalities themselves, feel free to think about any other relevant information that would be beneficial, whether it be projects, again, like I said, awards or scholarships, dean's list, organizations that you're a part of, volunteerism, and technical skills. Think about what is going to be the most valuable for the positions that you're looking to apply to and how you can show them, and kind of adding them as formalities can be a good way to, again, bolster your value as a candidate. I apologize for the echo, everybody. Let me see if I can do anything to fix that. Sorry about that, everybody. Let me know if it gets any better. And again, I apologize for the difficulties there. So then finally, with education, be specific and as specific as you can be when it comes to your achievements, and think about the Okay, excellent. I'll see if I can tweak it a little bit so that it's not so bad. I know that's a little bit distracting, so again, my apologies, and we'll see if we can do anything to work that out. But moving with the education, being as specific as you can, be selective. Think about your GPA, dean's list. You don't have to include this information if you don't want to. So be specific. If you think maybe you would be more benefited by leaving your GPA off, feel free to do that. If you think that your GPA is exceptionally high and you want to show that, add it in. Again, same with dean's list or other academic awards. Just make sure that you're listing everything clearly and again in an easily readable way. So then finally, some additional thoughts when it comes to the content itself, making sure that you are considering what is most relevant to the position that you're pursuing. So if there are things that you've done, that have nothing to do with the role, you don't have to include those. Make sure you're being deliberate about the information that you are presenting about yourself. Look at what the position requires, look at what the company values, and that's actually something that's really important to do, is kind of look through the mission statement so that you can align your resume with what their goal is. That's also a great tip for interviews. So before an interview, always make sure to read through the company's information, go to their website, do a little bit of digging so that you can show that you are aligned with their values, aligned with their interests and their mission. So then some common mistakes that we see very frequently, and these are things that you should avoid whenever you can. Again, we want to make sure that you're standing out, that you're putting yourself in the best position to move forward with the job search. So first of all, don't start with a summary, don't start with an objective, start with a summary. So using an objective is dated at this point, and a summary is much more valuable when it comes to the benefits that you're bringing to a company. So rather than saying what you want to do, say what you have done, say what you can do. And again, it kind of adds more action and it shows more strength as a candidate. You can really use that area to show your skills. And again, you want to always avoid any irrelevant information. If it has nothing to do with the job posting, it does need to be on the resume. And then something as well is describing responsibilities rather than accomplishments. And that's something that we see a lot, is a very task-based resume rather than an accomplishment-driven resume. You want to show, again, the impact that you can make, not just rote tasks that you can assign. So steer away from task-based language and just describing basic responsibilities that might not be as relevant. Spelling and grammatical errors, always stay away from that. You don't want to, again, look disorganized or look like you haven't put any thought into that. And then funky formatting, as we've gone over, it's not good. It messes with the ATS, and it also might not be looked upon well by the hiring manager itself. So keep things clean. Be a little bit creative if you want, but don't go too far and don't go too crazy and jeopardize your chances of being considered for a role. So I'll pull up a sample resume here in just a moment so you can look over what we recommend when it comes to formatting. And again, it doesn't have to look exactly like this, but make sure that you're keeping it in mind. There's a good amount of white space. Everything is clearly labeled. It looks right. There's nothing too much going on. You can see sub-bullets here. Feel free to use sub-bullets to quantify your achievements if you think it'd be helpful to add more context to one of your bullets. And you always want to stick with the bulleted format as well. So that's something to keep in mind. Again, it doesn't have to look exactly like that, but just make sure that you're keeping those best practices in mind so that it's formatted in a way that is visually pleasing to whoever or whatever software is going to be reading it. So now that we've gone over the resume itself, we can get into job search best practices. So the rules for a good job search during a pandemic, it's not different, it's just more important. So whether we were in a pandemic or not, these would be what we would recommend, but it becomes especially crucial now as the market does become more saturated, as things do become more complicated. You really want to stick with these best practices to find success. So take the time to adjust the resume for every posting that you apply to. Every single one, you want to make sure that you are tweaking and modifying to align with what they are looking for. So send out 10 strong tailored resumes and cover letters a day, and make sure that each of those is relevant and is changed to align with the job descriptions using those keywords rather than just sending 50 general basic resume submissions out a day. And when it comes to the cover letter, that's also a great place to use those keywords. So you can do that. And you can come up with a more generalized cover letter, but also tweak it each time that you apply to put in information about the company, their mission, why you like it, and the skills that you have that are relevant. LinkedIn is an incredible tool to connect with professionals. It's great for the job search. It's also a great place to search for jobs, find jobs, but you can also leverage those professional connections. Connect with professionals at the employer that you want to work for. And you can ask them and send them a quick message on their organization, that you're interested, and ask them for their advice on how to get a job there. And they might not always reply, but it'll still be beneficial if one does, and it'll still also show the employer that you put in the work. When they look you up on LinkedIn, they'll see that you have connections with the company. We also recommend following the company, again, just to declare that interest and show that there. And then finally, just be mindful of how many resumes and applicants that recruiters and talent acquisition professionals are seeing on a daily basis. They see hundreds, if not thousands, of resumes per day. So just keep that in mind and follow up with them if you haven't heard anything. I think it's also really important to remember that if you haven't heard anything that doesn't say anything about you or your value as a candidate, it could be that you're just not what they're looking for the role. It could also be that they just didn't get to see your resume because they see so many. It's okay to get those rejections. Just make sure that you're understanding that it's not a reflection on you or your skill set or your experience, and keep moving forward. Perseverance is crucial in the job search. So again, making sure that you're not letting yourself get too dejected, even though it is an emotional process, but keeping going and moving forward there. Some other tips are staying active during downtime. So maybe you've got a little bit less on your plate because of everything happening. So make sure that you can use that downtime wisely and do some research into the industries and companies that you're looking for. Look at roles that maybe you've never even heard of. Again, just to expand your skill set, gain that industry knowledge. And you can also take online certification classes, trainings, build up those skills that they are looking for. So that's a great way to use time. There are a lot of free classes and trainings online, or if there's a certification that you know is very valued in your industry, you can go ahead and look into getting that just to show that you're gaining that experience there. It's also really important to understand that companies know that new grads will probably not have the exact experience that every job description is looking for. What's important is the soft skills and the transferable skills. So being able to show maybe you're an exceptional communicator, maybe your attention to detail is insane, maybe you're great at multitasking. You can show those, and that will make up for the lack of direct industry experience. Because again, they understand they're looking for new grads, and you're not necessarily going to have all of those skill sets, but you have built up those strengths throughout your academic career. If you've worked in the past, all of that, make sure to show that so that they can see that value. And then finally, researching emerging tools for building a skill. You can get a certification in Salesforce, Excel, QuickBooks. Think about the tools and technologies that these companies are using, and think about how you can gain more experience and more proficiency in those. So you can just a quick Google search, look at how you can look into getting those, and that will add significant value. All right. Well, thank you everybody so much for taking the time to join us today for this presentation. I apologize again for the echo. Hopefully it wasn't too bad. Thank you for sitting through that. Please let me know if you have any questions at all. You can also go to our website, employmentboost.com, if there are any other questions that you have. If you're interested in more help with resume writing or coaching, feel free to go there and let me know if you have any questions. Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. I'll be sticking around for just a moment here, so feel free to type into the chat if you have any thoughts or if any questions did come up. Otherwise, again, feel free to reach out on our website if there's anything that comes to mind at a later date. All right, I'm signing off here. Again, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And thank you all again so much for taking the time to be here today. I hope you have a great rest of your day.